The digital clock on the interrogation room wall blinked 3:17 a.m. The hour of confessions, or lies. Anna Reed sat in a metal chair bolted to the floor, her hands wrapped around a styrofoam cup gone cold. A two-way mirror watched her breathe. Her reflection stared back, pale, sleepless, and hollowed around the eyes. She looked like someone who hadn't cried yet, but might. Detective Marcus Hale pushed a recorder toward her. He didn't sit. He just stood, waiting, like the room itself was a witness. "Anna," he said quietly. "Before I hit play, I need you to understand something." She lifted her eyes, detached, like she had used up every ounce of fear hours ago. "We aren't here because of what was said on the recording," Hale continued. "We're here because of who sent it." Anna blinked. "I didn't send anything." He studied her, measuring every micro-expression. "That's what we're going to find out." He pressed play. A soft static crackled through the speakers, like air trembling before a storm. Then a frail voice, wavering, full of sand and regrets. "I killed her. The little girl on Willow Creek Road." Anna inhaled sharply. Hale watched her reaction instead of the speaker. He already knew the recording word for word. The voice continued, raspy, trying to hold itself together. "I never stopped seeing her face. I was drunk. I never meant for it to happen." Anna's fingers tightened around the cup. To anyone else, it was a tragic confession. To Anna Reed, it was familiar. Personal. Because she knew the story. Everyone in her family did. 23 years ago, her older sister walked to the gas station for candy and never made it home. A hit and run. No suspects. No justice. The tape crackled again. She was 8. Anna's grip convulsed. The cup crumpled. The voice trembled harder, drowning in its own guilt. "There was another witness, someone who covered for me." "Someone who?" The tape distorted, as if choking on the truth. Detective Hale paused the playback. "Do you recognize the voice?" Anna swallowed. Her throat felt sanded raw. "Yes." "Name?" She hesitated, like saying it would make everything irreversible. "Richard Halden." Hale wrote the name in his notebook in slow, deliberate strokes. "He was your patient at Rosewood Hospice." Anna nodded once. "And how long ago was this recording made?" 2 nights ago." Hale leaned against the wall, watching her carefully. "Tell me," he said, "why were you recording him?" Anna didn't answer immediately. The recording equipment, the routine, the moral justification, she suddenly felt naked beneath the fluorescent light. "I document final confessions," she said at last. "Patients say things when they know they're dying. Truths they never told their families. Secrets they don't want buried. So you record dying people without their consent. They want the truth remembered. They don't consent. They confess." Hale's jaw flexed. "And what do you do with the recordings?" "Nothing," Anna said. "I store them. That's all. Not this one." Anna wrapped her arms around herself. "I didn't send that tape to the police." Hale took a step closer. "Someone did." Silence closed around her. He tapped the recorder. "Your voice is on this. Not just his." Anna's eyes snapped up. "What?" "I'm telling you what our audio tech confirmed. We isolated the background track." A whisper. "Female. Saying the name Anna." "That's impossible." Hale pressed play again. The confession resumed. "I saw her in the headlights. She had braids." She dropped the candy. Anna squeezed her eyes shut. Her chest locked. But then, buried under the man's final breaths, a faint whisper slid like a blade across the audio. "Anna." Hale paused the tape. Anna's heartbeat stopped. "I never said anything," Anna whispered. "I never spoke." Hale didn't blink. Then how is your voice on the recording? 2 hours earlier, before the police arrived, Anna's world was still intact. She was at Rosewood Hospice, dragging her cart of linens down the night corridor, the hour where the building felt more like a church than a medical facility. The hall was lined with doors that held endings, each nameplate a countdown. Room 12 was at the end of the corridor. Richard Halden's room. Even when he slept, he looked like he was thinking. That night, when Anna checked his vitals, he stared at her with that quiet, unnerving focus. "You came back," he whispered. "I'm just doing the rounds," she replied, adjusting his blanket. But then he said her mother's maiden name. She froze. "You must be confused," she murmured, trying to sound calm. "Confused?" Richard smiled thinly. "No. Haunted." There was something hollow in him, not just death. Shame. A lifetime of it. "Why did you choose me?" Anna asked. Richard turned his head toward the window, where the parking lot lights flickered like distant candles. "Because some truths don't want to die with us." Anna left his room shaking. Her job was to listen, not interfere. She repeated the rule to herself like a lifeline. "I do not interfere. I only listen." But something about Richard Halden felt wrong. Not dangerous. Just intentional. At 2:03 a.m., she set the recorder beside his bed. "If you want to tell your story," she whispered, "I'll listen." Richard inhaled slowly, the sound of a man deciding to destroy his own world. That was the night the tape was made. That was the night everything changed. Back in the interrogation room, Hale crossed his arms. "You recorded a dying man confessing to killing a child, your sister, and you expect me to believe you didn't send it?" Anna stared at the table. "I don't hurt people," she said quietly. "I just catch the truth before it disappears." Hale clicked off the recorder. "You didn't just catch a truth, Anna. Someone weaponized it." He leaned forward until his face was inches from hers. "And until I know who, no one is going home." Anna Reed sat perfectly still. Not crying. Not breaking. But with a look that said the truth wasn't finished. Not even close. The hospice hallway smelled of antiseptic and rain that had tracked in on shoes. The clock read 2:07 a.m., a time when most people believed the world was asleep, but in Rosewood, the night was alive with small, nearly imperceptible sounds, the drip of an 4, the hum of a heart monitor, the distant shuffle of a janitor's mop. Anna Reed walked carefully, cart rattling lightly behind her. Every room held its own quiet story, each patient breathing in the last fragments of life. She had walked these halls thousands of times, but tonight they felt different. He waited at the end, Richard Halden. She had prepared herself for the ordinary. Patients whispered memories about lost loves, confessions about misdeeds, quiet regrets meant for no one else. But there was nothing ordinary about Richard. Even in his frailty, his eyes were sharp and alert, tracking her as though he had been expecting her. "You've come back," he said, his voice so thin it might have been mistaken for the hiss of the oxygen machine. Anna paused, gripping the handle of the blanket cart tighter. "I'm just doing my rounds," she said. Her voice was calm, professional, but inside her, something twisted tight. Richard's gaze didn't waver. "I've been waiting for you." She shook her head slightly. "I don't understand." "You'll understand soon enough," he said, leaning back against the pillows, a ghost of a smile flickering across his gaunt face. "But first, I need to speak." Anna's hand brushed the small recorder she always carried in her apron pocket. It was tucked discreetly, but tonight, she knew it would be needed. She had always told herself she was merely a listener, a witness to final truths. But with Richard, that role felt fragile. Something about him demanded more than silent observation. She placed the recorder on the bedside table, its small red light blinking to life. Richard's hands shook as he lifted them from under the blanket. "I killed her," he whispered. Anna's stomach twisted. Every instinct told her to step back, to breathe through the shock, to remain the impartial witness she had sworn to be. Yet the words pierced deeper than she expected. "My sister," Anna said before she could stop herself, her voice barely audible. Richard's eyes met hers directly. "I didn't just kill her," he said, voice breaking. "I drove away. I didn't look back. I couldn't." Anna felt the room shrink. Memories pressed against her temples, the small yellow raincoat, the flash of headlights, the scream she could never remember fully but had never truly forgotten. She knelt beside him, careful not to touch, careful not to disturb the fragile air between life and death. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked. Richard swallowed, each breath a struggle. "Because no one else will listen. No one else will know. And because someone has to." He paused, looking toward the window where the night was black and still. "Your father, he thought he protected you. He thought hiding the truth would keep you safe." Anna's hands clutched the edge of the chair. "My father?" "Yes," Richard said, eyes closing for a moment. "He covered for me. He made sure the world never knew my name, and that little girl," his voice faltered. "That little girl had to disappear from your life like a shadow you'd never chase." Anna felt a wave of nausea. The words were heavy, dragging years of silence into the present. She had spent decades believing Emily's death was a tragic accident, that the world had simply been cruel and random. She had carried grief carefully, like a fragile crystal. And now, the edges were breaking. She pressed her hand to her mouth. "Why are you confessing to me? Why not the police?" Richard opened his eyes again. "Because I didn't want justice," he said quietly. "I wanted someone to remember her. Someone to know her story. Someone who could carry it if I couldn't." Anna's throat tightened. She reached out instinctively, hovering over the recorder. "You knew I would record you," she whispered. "I saw it," he said, voice hoarse. "The way you sit. The way you listen. The silence you carry like armor. I knew you would remember. I knew you would hear it." A long pause stretched between them, filled only by the faint hiss of the oxygen machine. "You should have called someone," Anna finally said. Her voice trembled slightly. This is murder." Richard's lips twitched. "I know." And then he added something that made her freeze entirely. "And you were there." Her heart stuttered. What?" "I saw you," he said. "You were a child. You couldn't have known, but," his voice trailed off. "The truth always comes back." Anna's fingers went to the recorder. She pressed record. Every word he spoke would now be captured. Every tremble, every whispered admission, every shred of guilt. "I was driving a black Buick. Rain. No lights. She ran into the road. I tried to stop. I couldn't." He swallowed and looked at her with an intensity that made her knees weaken. "Emily Reed. Your sister. I ran away. And I thought I could live with it. But every night, I see her. I see you. I see your father. And the secret," his eyes filled with tears. "The secret will die only when someone bears it." Anna's chest tightened. She pressed the recorder closer to him, absorbing every word. The air was heavy, thick with unsaid things, unclaimed guilt, and the inevitability of revelation. Hours passed. The night grew older. Richard's breathing slowed. His eyelids drooped. And yet, he kept speaking. Words spilling from a man at the edge of life, words that might have destroyed her, haunted her, and yet somehow, unburdened him. When she finally left the room, the hallway was quiet, still, indifferent. Anna clutched the recorder to her chest. The rules she had lived by, never interfere, only listen, felt both sacred and hollow. Because tonight, she had become something more. She was not just a witness. She was now a keeper. And the truth she had just heard would not remain buried. Anna sat alone in her small apartment, the recorder lying on the kitchen counter like a black stone of guilt. Rain tapped against the window in irregular bursts, each droplet sounding like a countdown. She replayed Richard Halden's words in her mind, the details, the voice, the trembling admission. Every syllable pressed against her ribs, demanding she decide, act, or remain silent. Her father's absence hung heavier than the storm outside. He had died 3 years ago, a man who carried the secret of her sister's death in the quiet of his own life. Now, she held it too. But holding a secret was one thing. Acting on it was another entirely. The first thought that struck her was simple: go to the police. Hand over the recording. Let justice run its course. Let the guilty be punished. But then, she imagined the fallout. Richard's family, wealthy, established, well-connected, could lose everything. His life savings, his home, the reputation his grandchildren relied on. And for what? Her breath caught. Justice wasn't simple. It was jagged, sharp, and capable of cutting everything in its path. Anna's fingers hovered over the recorder. She pressed play once more. Someone else was there, watching. Your father knew. He covered for me. The whisper at the end, her own voice saying, he wasn't the only one responsible, made her stomach twist. Someone had manipulated the recording. Someone wanted her involved. But why? She remembered Detective Hale's words from the interrogation, until I know who, no one is going home. She shivered. The thought of police intervention, of legal entanglements, of public exposure, made her feel trapped. And yet, her sister had died. Emily's life had been stolen, and nobody had ever been held accountable. Anna's mind raced. She imagined the headlines: elderly man confesses to child's death, family secrets revealed. She imagined herself in the news, her father's reputation destroyed posthumously, her own life dissected by reporters, neighbors, strangers. Her hands shook. She couldn't decide. The recorder blinked quietly, an innocuous object holding a storm. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospice: please call me. Urgent. L. Anna dialed. Linda Carson's voice was tight, professional. Anna, I need to know what's on that tape. It's personal, Anna said cautiously. It's a patient confession. You don't want to hear it. I already know about Richard, Linda said, voice sharp. I've heard things. And now, it's not just him. There's been a leak. Someone sent the recording to the police. Anna's pulse jumped. Leak? Yes. And someone added a voice at the end. Your voice. Saying something about his responsibility. Anna froze. She hadn't said a word. Exactly, Linda said. I need you to explain this before it gets worse. Anna hung up and sank into the nearest chair, head in her hands. Her apartment felt smaller, the walls closer, the rain louder. Her mind returned to Richard. The old man's frailty had masked a sharp awareness. He had known she would listen. He had known she would record. He had deliberately chosen her as the keeper of the confession. And now, someone else had turned it into a weapon. The moral weight pressed down. If she went to the police, she would betray Richard's final wishes. She would also expose the secret her father had carried all those years, the same secret that had shielded her from knowing the full truth. But if she stayed silent, she would betray her sister. Betray Emily's memory. Betray herself. Anna's chest ached. She pulled the recorder closer and pressed play again. The sound filled the room, Richard's voice, wavering, apologetic, honest. His final confession, his attempt at absolution. I never stopped seeing her face. I thought the secret would die with me. Anna's eyes stung. She imagined Emily, small and trembling, the last moments of her life playing over and over. The injustice was unbearable. But justice could destroy lives beyond Richard's. She thought about the whisper on the tape, her own voice. Someone had manipulated it. Someone wanted her to act. But who? And why? The question refused to let her rest. Night passed. The rain slowed. Dawn crept across the city, pale and hesitant. Anna didn't move from the chair. Every scenario replayed in her mind, the police knocking at her door, Richard's family losing everything, her father's name dragged through public scrutiny, her own life unraveling. And then, a sound made her freeze. A soft whisper, barely audible, as if carried on the wind through the slightly open window. Anna. Her heart leapt. She was alone. The whisper came again, faint, deliberate. You must decide. Anna leaned forward. The recorder sat on the counter, humming quietly like a heart. She knew, in that moment, that the decision was hers alone. And it wasn't just about Richard Halden. It wasn't just about Emily. It was about truth itself, and how far she was willing to go to honor it, or bury it. Her hands shook, but not from fear. They shook from the weight of responsibility. Because some truths, once heard, could never be unheard. And some decisions, once made, could never be undone. The envelope had no return address. No stamp. Just her name, written in slanted, hurried letters that trembled like they had been penned in fear. Anna found it slipped beneath her apartment door early that morning, the rain-soaked streets outside giving the envelope an almost spectral quality. She hesitated before picking it up, the paper cold and stiff beneath her fingertips. Inside was a single Polaroid and a folded newspaper clipping. The photo showed a little girl in a yellow raincoat, braids bouncing as she ran across a wet street. Anna's chest constricted. Emily. Her sister. The image tore at the edges of memory, vivid yet fractured. Her mind flashed to a day long buried, the cold asphalt, the sharp glare of headlights, the sound of tires on wet pavement. She had tried to forget, to rationalize it as an accident, but the photo made the past snap back into focus like a whip. The newspaper headline screamed in bold, black ink. Local child killed in hit and run, driver still unknown. Her hands trembled as she held the Polaroid against the clipping. And then her eyes fell to the small note attached, scrawled in the same handwriting as the envelope. You were there. Ask your father. Her stomach dropped. Her father had been dead for 3 years. There was no one to ask. And yet, the message implied knowledge, a reckoning long overdue. Someone knew the truth. Someone had turned Richard Halden's confession into a weapon and placed it in her hands, compelling her to act. Anna sank into her chair, letting her knees fold beneath her as the rain drummed against her window. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her chest. She stared at the envelope, at the Polaroid, at the clipping. The pieces of the puzzle formed a pattern, but it was jagged, sharp-edged, incomplete. And there was another piece missing, the orchestrator. Whoever had sent this knew too much. Knew her, her father, Richard Halden, Emily. The clock ticked relentlessly. Minutes became hours. Anna pressed the recorder to her ear, listening again to Richard's trembling confession. The sound of his voice, fragile yet sharp with guilt, filled the room. Layered beneath it was her own whisper, unmistakably hers, saying, he wasn't the only one responsible. Her heart raced. The whisper was undeniable. But she hadn't spoken it. Not aloud. Not in her life. The realization hit her like ice. Someone had edited her voice into the confession, a subtle, malevolent signature meant to implicate her, to force her hand. The first knock at the apartment door startled her. Detective Marcus Hale's voice was calm but firm as he entered, shaking the rain from his coat. Anna, we need to talk, he said softly, surveying the room. I didn't do this, she said immediately, clutching the recorder like a shield. I didn't send the tape. I didn't whisper those words. I know, Hale said, eyes narrowing. But someone did. Someone wants you involved. And now, the police know about it. They've isolated 2 voices, Richard Halden's, and yours, or at least, someone made it sound like yours. Anna shook her head. I never spoke those words. Exactly, Hale said, leaning back against the doorframe. Someone is manipulating the truth, and they want you to carry the consequences. She sank into the nearest chair. Every shadow in the room seemed to loom closer. Every creak of the floorboards sounded deliberate. The world outside her window seemed quiet, but inside, her apartment vibrated with unseen tension. The silence was alive, pressing against her ears with the weight of accusation. Hours passed. The rain outside slowed to a drizzle, but the storm inside Anna did not abate. Every memory of Richard, every detail of Emily's death, every whispered word of her father's secret pressed against her consciousness. She replayed the tape, hoping to find a clue, an anomaly, a hint of who had manipulated her voice and for what purpose. But all she found were shadows, fragments, and guilt reaching across decades. By nightfall, the second envelope appeared, resting on her kitchen counter. This one was heavier, more deliberate, as if it had been placed there with purpose. Anna's hands trembled as she lifted it, a quiet dread curling through her stomach. Inside lay a USB drive. No note. No photograph. Just the stark, cold potential for revelation. She hesitated. Every instinct screamed to throw it away, destroy it, erase all evidence. But she pressed play. A voice sounded through the speakers, clear and deliberate. Anna, you need to hear this. Her heart thudded against her chest as she realized it was her own voice speaking. He wasn't the only one responsible. She fell back in the chair, staring at the ceiling as the words repeated in her ears. They weren't hers, not really, yet somehow they were. The reality was chilling. Someone had created this, shaped it, orchestrated it to force her into the story she had only witnessed, never participated in. Anna's mind raced. She traced every connection. Richard Halden's confession. Her father's silence. Emily's death. And now, the manipulated recordings, sent anonymously, pushed toward exposure. Someone was guiding the events, controlling how the truth surfaced. And Anna was at the center, a reluctant fulcrum of revelation. The night grew deeper. Anna paced her apartment, the recorder and USB drive clutched in her hands. Every scenario played across her mind, the police knocking at her door, Richard's family losing everything, her father's name dragged through the streets posthumously. The moral calculus was brutal, impossible, and inescapable. She realized that the tapes were not confessions alone. They were messages. Messages from the past demanding reckoning. Richard's words, her father's silence, Emily's stolen life, all had converged, reaching across time, pulling her toward the inevitable confrontation with the orchestrator behind it all. The rain slowed to a faint whisper, the city outside still and indifferent. Anna leaned back in her chair, exhausted, haunted, yet resolute. She understood now that the unraveling was not merely about exposing a killer. It was about confronting a legacy of secrets, about finally reconciling the sins of the past with the lives they had affected. She closed her eyes and exhaled, a long, deliberate breath that seemed to release years of tension. Tomorrow would demand answers, and she would follow the trail to its source. She would confront the one who manipulated the recordings, the one who had forced her to bear the truth, the one who held the last piece of the puzzle. Because confessions, once begun, demanded resolution. Because secrets, no matter how carefully buried, had a way of clawing their way into the light. And Anna Reed would face them all. The storm had passed, leaving the city drenched in pale morning light. Anna Reed sat in her car outside Rosewood Hospice, the recorder and USB drive resting on the passenger seat like fragile evidence of lives torn apart. She had rehearsed this moment countless times in her mind, yet nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. Inside, Richard Halden's room was quiet. The hospice smelled faintly of antiseptic and faded flowers, a fragile calm after the chaos of the night. Anna stepped inside, her boots soft against the linoleum floor. Richard lay in bed, thinner than the last time she had seen him, his frailty etched into every line of his face. Yet his eyes were clear, piercing, and full of a strange resolve. "You came," he whispered. "I had to," Anna said, her voice steady despite the churn in her chest. "There's a lot we need to sort out." Richard lifted a trembling hand. "I told you everything I knew. But there's one piece you never heard. Your father, he was there that night." Anna froze. Her stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Richard coughed, his voice rasping. He was young, scared. "When it happened, he covered for me. Made sure no one knew. That's why the case went cold. That's why your family never found closure." Anna's mind reeled. Her father had died carrying the secret, just as Richard had carried his own guilt. Generations bound by silence, by fear, by protection. The room felt impossibly small, the weight of truth pressing down on her like the ceiling itself. Richard's eyes softened. "I needed you to know. I needed someone to hear the whole story. Not the fragments. Not the lies. The truth." Anna took a shaky breath and pressed the recorder closer, letting it capture every word. She realized, in that moment, that the tape was no longer just evidence. It was a testament, a bridge across time, a vessel for both guilt and absolution. "Emily," Richard whispered, voice breaking, "I never meant for her life to end. And I never wanted yours to be shaped by it." Anna's throat tightened. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away. "It wasn't your fault alone," she said softly. "And it wasn't my father's fault alone. But it's the truth that matters now. We have to let it out." He nodded weakly, exhaustion settling over him like a blanket. "Then it's done," he said. "You carry it forward." The next few hours passed in surreal quiet. Anna reviewed every tape, every recording, every whisper that had haunted her. She pieced together the puzzle: Richard's confession, her father's complicity, the anonymous manipulation of the recordings, and the subtle, insistent push toward revelation. Someone had orchestrated it all. Someone who believed the truth could no longer remain buried. And then she realized, she was that someone now. She held the final piece. Anna made her way to Detective Marcus Hale's office, the weight of both guilt and clarity heavy on her shoulders. She handed over the recorder and the USB drive, not out of compliance, but out of necessity. The truth needed witnesses beyond herself, and Marcus was the bridge between the past and the present. He studied her, expression unreadable. "You're sure about this?" Anna nodded. "It's the only way. Not for punishment. Not for revenge. But for the truth. For Emily. And for the families who were trapped in silence for too long." Hale pressed play. Richard's voice filled the room, every tremble, every confession, every admission echoing against the walls. Anna listened quietly, the shadows of years lifting slowly from her chest. And then, the final revelation arrived. A subtle, almost imperceptible tremor in the recording revealed her father's voice, confessing in whispers, apologizing, carrying his share of the guilt across time. Anna's lips curved in a faint, bittersweet smile. The truth had finally come together. She left the police station with a strange sense of calm. The tapes, the confessions, the manipulated whispers, they had done what they were meant to do. They had carried the weight of guilt, and now they were free. Back at the hospice, Richard Haldon had passed quietly, surrounded by the soft hum of machines and the fading light of dawn. Anna sat in his empty room, alone but not lonely. She placed a single flower on the bedside table, a gesture of forgiveness and remembrance. "Some confessions aren't made to the police," she whispered to the empty room. "They're made to the ones who need to hear them." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. Rain-soaked streets reflected the golden light, and for the first time in years, Anna felt the heavy chains of the past loosen. The truth had found its caretaker, and in that act, both the living and the dead could finally breathe. Anna stepped into the hallway, recorder in hand, ready to continue her work. The confession chair had changed everything: her role, her understanding of justice, her grasp of morality. She had learned that silence could be dangerous, but the careful stewardship of truth could be redemptive. As she walked past the rooms filled with life, with endings, with confessions waiting to be heard, she understood fully: every silence hides a truth, and every truth has a keeper. And she would remain that keeper, ready for the next secret that demanded to be heard. If this story left you on the edge of your seat, or made you wonder about the truths hidden in silence, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The confession chair has more secrets waiting, and every silence deserves a listener.